pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the two primary goals tonight is to demonstrate the tourniquet, referred to as CAT, and also the Israeli bandages. So some of the tables, if we need to consolidate, if you don't have one, because we've got about like 4 or 5 of the bandages and several of the CATs. The videos will explain a lot about that. And we'll watch the video. I'll do a demo on the Israeli bandage, just a quick one. I'll use Brian. Do I need to cut you?
I prefer not, because
All
then
right.
you got to use the freaking tourniquet. That's going to hurt.
Yeah, I'll do a quick demo on that, and then watch the video, and then we'll do some round robin type things where you're at your table and opening up the bandages and the tourniquet. Now, one thing we have found is that the tourniquet casing can be a little tough to open. I had to use my teeth, which probably my dentist didn't like that idea, but or the scissors in the bag or whatever you have. I would go back, if you have one at home, and go ahead and take that out. It's not critical that that be sanitary, because that's designed to be above the wound in order to apply the tourniquet. It just will save you probably a minute, and a minute can be very important on that. Before we get started, I'll do the chair reports. Heights aren't here, but let me kind of go over the treasury. There's at least one sheet on each table. As of today, October 4th, the balance is $1,051.19. We had added a lot with the sale of the trauma kits, and this does not include the fundraiser that's fixing to come up. I think that's November, if I'm not correct, on the... Yes. November 12th? Okay. I'm going to have Brian come up. Any other chair that has any announcements at this point? Brian's going to come up. I know we had the recent high-end experience. I think as a community we came out pretty good. We just need to keep our prayers and thoughts for those down in the East Coast and down towards south around Fort Myers. I saw some photos, and it's just unbelievable, some of the things that those people are suffering right now. And we need to be mindful of that. Also, Channel 6, if you're interested in donating any money, they're working with the Salvation Army. You can go on their website and make a donation. Also, the Red Cross centers around, mainly in the Orlando area, about making donations and so forth. Brian's going to talk a little bit. We did an after-action report, and he's going to talk a little bit about our response to the storm.
Well, I hope I brought that with me. Okay, I do have it with me. Hey guys. Okay, so let's start off with the last fundraiser that we had. Going to kind of branch off just a moment, hit the other topics. For the Forward Paths, they had a Friday, it was a Sunday, the 25th of September. They held another one of the fundraisers. It's going to be, as far as I know, the very last one that we're going to be having for Forward Paths. The total that has been raised, including the $300 in donations, because this was just a donation event. There wasn't any dinner. They had New Band in Town, I think, was the band that was playing that evening. And went pretty good, $300 in donations. So the total for the year that's been raised is somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000. We'd asked Jerry Seward for that final amount, but we had not received it as of this evening. So not real sure how much, but a pretty good effort was, I would say, and that money is going to go to that organization, which, as you may recall, is when children age out of the foster care system. When they turn 18, they're basically kicked to the curb, and they're up to their own devices going forward. And so Forward Paths is, an organization that helps them transition from being in the foster care system into the general public. So congratulations to all those that were involved in that. That was a lot of hard work that went there to make that happen. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to Forward Paths for our donations. So the hurricane. Raise your hand if you're glad it didn't actually hit us. Oh my gosh. I am so thankful that that storm I don't know if you looked at the actual track that it took, if you paid any attention, but it was jogging right up to the last instant before it made the turn to the north. And of course that took us out of the dirty side of that hurricane. You know, the front right quadrant, right? If the hurricane's going this way, this whole section from here to there, Danger Will Robinson with tornado possibilities. So I am thankful that we were removed from the predominantly bad side of that hurricane. I don't know what our max wind speeds were, but I would assume they were in the 60 to 65 mile an hour range. I haven't gone back to see what those max speeds were. Did anyone happen to? No. 53? Okay. Could be, that'd be fine with me. You know, during Irma, they had 74 mile an hour winds at the Leesburg airport. So, as we all know, no real damage occurred, just a bunch of small branches. A couple trees did come down. One was an Italian cypress across a gentleman, a couple, husband and wife, I assume. Across their driveway. He was going to handle that. And I don't know where the other tree was, but there was some sort of a report, I believe, of a tree down in the driveway. So looking at the after action report, let me see if I can get to that. I know I got it here somewhere. I think it's the final page. After action report, I did include that in the packet of emails that I sent out announcing the meeting. The pre-storm communication via text and email was good. That went really smooth. From my perspective, that is the most efficient way and fastest way that I can communicate to literally everybody that we have in our organization, which is close to 85 people in total, including chairs, block captains, medical teams, radio teams. So it worked out real well. The process that I do that, I don't know how many of you are familiar with how to create a group message. It's not rocket science, but first I have to have everybody's information in my cell phone in my contact list. And then there is a route when I go in to create a group message where I select that I want to pull all these names from a group, select all the names in that group, and then I can create the the text message that is going to go out. So there is a limitation on how many of these you can send at a time. I can't send all 85 people. It won't allow me to do that. So the way I've been doing it, you may have noticed sections. Section 1, I make a group email for section 1. I select all the people that are in section 1. I then type that message. I copy it, right? Send the message, create the group message for section 2, and paste what I just copied into that and send it. That took me about 15 seconds to send the second one. From there on, they're quick. Bing, bang, boom. And within 3 minutes, I've sent the text messages to everybody in our group. Now, it's all well and good as long as the cell phone service is still functioning. And there could be where maybe some people's cell phone carrier may function. I'm on T-Mobile. There could be Sprint or one of the other carriers, they're down. So even though I think I'm sending the message, it may not actually reach all the intended recipients. So that could still be something that could bite us. We could totally lose cell phone service. You know, the towers were knocked out, you know, and they're laying in a heap on the ground somewhere, and our cell service is completely gone. So does anyone recall how we handle things if the cell phones aren't working or email's not working? Does anyone?
Use radio.
Not everybody has a radio.
You go to your assigned radio.
Bing, bing, bing. Go to your stationary radio location and gather there. We will be communicating via radio to the radio people only. There's no way to communicate. Let's say if you don't have a radio, you're not going to know diddly about what's going on. The only way we can send mass information is to have people kind of collected into, this spot has 10 people in section 1, this spot has 15 people, section 2, and one radio message now goes to everybody. Basically the same thing as texting, but it's audio, right? So that's how we would handle it. If we aren't able to send out text messages, or you haven't received a text message, and the winds have dropped below what speed?
30.
And how much rain?
3/4.
Very good, you guys get the keepy doll. So that's the time to then go. Daylight hours only. So if it happens overnight, we go at dawn, right? Once it gets out light enough that we can see what we're going to be doing, it's time to go to your stationary radio location. Even if the cell phone text messages are working, we still go there because we're going to be sending out possibly some final instructions for all the different sections, because section 1 and section 2, they barely got touched. It was a tornado that came through, right? So they didn't get touched. However, section 3 is in total destruction. Well, that's where we need all the block captains to go, is to the most affected area if it's only in 1 or 2 areas, you know. So we would then radio communicate all block captains in section 1 and section 2. If you could please go to section number 3. You're desperately needed there. So that's why we have you go and kind of check in with your radio person so they know who they've got, number 1. And number 2 is to receive any additional last moment information, especially if the cell phones are down. We can't redirect you. Okay? So Lou and Gary, they were already, I believe, in contact with the EOC. And so that worked out the way it was supposed to. Neighborhood Watch, you know, we have Tony Patrica. I never say his name right. Thank you, just continue to correct me, I'll never get it right. He had his people standing by and ready to go. Yeah, I did kind of keep in, you know, some awareness of what we were, weather-wise, what we were doing and when to go or not go. And that's when I first sent out that text message. It was about 8:30ish that morning on, was it Tuesday morning, I think it was, or was it Wednesday morning, I guess. I lost track of days there. And everybody responded. Congratulations, everybody. I think you guys did a really good job with responding. I got the right responses. There wasn't any idle chit-chat going on the text messaging. Ed Giovanni in section 1 did say, hey, I don't know who's sending messages. Well, here's the whole thing. This isn't for conversation. It's not a telephone that we're having a conversation about how's the weather. This is really a one-way communication to you. Now, your responses coming back were appropriate. You know, they were, this has happened over here. That's happened over there. And that's exactly what we wanted to see. But we didn't want to start clogging these text messages because I'm somewhat trying to keep track of 85 conversations simultaneously. And talk about blowing my mind. If I start having to deal with, 50 conversations in each group because they're all chatting, I'm going to lose my freaking mind. It's just plain and simple. I'll just turn my cell phone off and go back to sleep, and you guys figure out how to make it happen at that point. So, not having everybody's telephone number programmed into your cell phone, which is what it would take if you were to be able to know who everybody is that's on that conversation or on that group, could degrade it to the point of it's being useless. So we don't want to lose this, I think, highly effective tool. So I did respond to Ed with that same kind of message, that this really is not a conversation, two-way conversation for the most part. It's a one-way. It's information coming to you. Now, if you needed to reach me, you could either put it on that group message, or you could just send just a straight text message straight to me and not involve the other people in your group, the 15 other people or 20 people, whatever. Moving on, assessments. We already kind of went over that. Not too bad. I don't know about you guys, just a bunch of oak tree litter on the ground, no big branches even, and at least none at the Holmes Hacienda. It was not too bad. It took a garbage can to put everything in and kind of scrunch it down, and it all fit. And it went out in the trash today, so all's good. No, we didn't use the handheld radios. I understand there may have been some people that did turn it on. I didn't even turn my radio on. I was focused on the text message since it was running. So, but we had a few issues with communication community-wide. That's been worked out by Gary. Thank you, Gary, for all the hard work you've put in on this as well. If Carl was here, I'd be saying the same thing to him. If Lou was here, I'd be saying the same thing to him. Thank you for the communication team.
Do you want me to bring up the two people?
The two people.
Down in Cape Coral that we took care of?
I think you might have, was that the one where you were in California and they were off the coast?
That's a different one. This is the real one.
Oh.
You were at the house when I was discussing it.
Right.
Want me to
Well,
discuss
come on up. Give the man a mic. Yeah, come on up here.
We actually saved 2 people and 2 dogs. Seriously,
Just with this hurricane?
with this hurricane. I told you. Linda Apple called me on the phone, or maybe it was on the handheld radio that Carl had, and said that her sister and her husband and 2 dogs are down in Cape Coral, and they cannot get a hold of 911 to see if they can, what they can do, if they have to stay to go, where they can go, or whatever. They could not get a hold of anybody down there. So I called Lou and I said, okay, Lou, call the EOC, and here's what I want you to do. So I gave them all the information. Within a half an hour, the call back to Linda was, we're all taken care of, thank you very much. They had the EOC had gotten a hold of 911 down in that area. They called them direct, told them exactly what to do, stay there, etc., and just stay there and nothing's going to happen to them. They did that, it all worked out perfect. So we were able to help 2 people on the other coast.
Wow, that's really great. Good story, Gary. So our system does kind of work, even if it's not for us. Way to go. Okay, moving on. Medical people were not necessary on this. We had no reports of trees through roofs or houses partially with torn off roofs or something. So we did not perform the door-to-door welfare checks. The thinking was it was just another day, just another storm through Florida. No biggie for us, However, we did keep them informed as well. Those that are on the medical team, they were right in there with the same groups. When I create the groups, it has all components: block captains, radio folks, medical folks, so everybody was in the loop and getting the same information simultaneously. Larry did get in touch with the CAM and the board of directors, especially Alex Elefante, is that correct? Keep them kind of in the loop. It's good press, I guess, if you will, for neighbor to neighbor, showing what our commitment is to the community, and that may help when we're trying to finally get permission to install the ham radio antennas, if we can get the number of votes that we'll need, whether it's the current 667 votes, or if we get the covenants changed to where we would only need 501. Whatever it is, it is a covenant change, so it will be dependent upon whether or not we can get that to go through.
Did you get the word today that Chris is now our president?
You know, I saw something about volunteer. Alex stepped down.
Yeah.
Oh. That's too bad. In my mind, just my opinion. Yes, ma'am.
So, not today's board meeting, but the one last week, I don't know who attended or listened or what have you. It was brought up that neighborhood watch and neighbor were, at the ready, et cetera. And then it was brought up how the vote, for the antenna and how, it's for, this club and, improving communications in case, the hurricane did come through. So all that you just said was mentioned at the last board meeting, for those of you who might not have been there. So I just
Thank
wanted
you,
to make
Christine.
sure folks were aware of that.
No, we appreciate that. Okay, so it's out there, front and center. Good. Well, we'll see where that goes.
Brian,
Yes, ma'am. Or sir.
did the CAM mention, or did the CAM say anything about how soon? I don't need a microphone. Did the CAM say how long it would take to replace the signs that went down on the?
No, but they just said, indicated there were two missing,
Two?
They were being replaced today. I saw John with some signs in the back of his cart, driving
Okay.
around replacing them.
Good.
Not Bradford, but John, the maintenance person. I don't know his last name. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good.
Yeah.
I was just wondering how quickly they responded to our news.
Right.
We had sent that out the same day.
Yeah, Larry was Johnny on the spot on that. So that pretty much wraps up the assessment. Now, we did have a post-hurricane debrief over at Gary's house with Carl, Gary, myself, and Larry. And one of the things that Carl really pressed home, and I'm as stubborn as a mule, and so he had to hit me with a 2x4 about 3-4 times before I finally got what he was trying to tell me. It has to do with, do you guys remember these? Do you remember that we have a special one for neighbor to neighbor that is divided into how many sections? 5 is the correct number. The problem is, that scenario where section 1 and section 2, you're all good, but we need everybody from section 1 and section 2 to go to section number 3. You might be going, I'm not sure exactly where section number 3 is, but if you pull out your map, you then see it's down here, kind of center in the bottom. However, we may be saying, please go to lot number 452. And you'll say, I can't read the stinking map. The print is way too small. I don't have a magnifying glass big enough to make it where I can read it. So I sent out an email right after the hurricane that showed you what the numbers are for the lots. And so if you have not already altered your map, because most people, I had you write it. When we were handing out those operations manuals, about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, however long ago that was, One of the things I had you do was to, in your own handwriting, write down the lot numbers. Well, since then, there have been new block captains that have come on board, and I might have been remiss. It's one of those things that I should have said to people, but I might not have. So we want to make sure that everybody knows, at least you're within, sheeting range. If we send you to lot 452, you'll go, oh, that's section number 3. And if you have the lot number to address conversion tables, which should be still, hopefully, a part of your operations manual, it'll give you the street address. So now you have the street address to go by. And so you head over to lot 452, to whatever address that may be, and presto changeo, you're there, and there's a whole lot of people kind of rushing to the same area to start helping. So that is an important step. Yes, go ahead.
In fact, Loretta and I were talking about this. Is it possible? Thank you, sir. Is it possible to take each section individually and blow it up so that we could have, say, 5 sheets of paper with the enlarged map, but have them at a section, 1 section per page. And then it would be a lot easier to read and a lot easier to find if we're in a hurry.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
I have an enlarged map of the whole development. But I had forever.
How big is it? Can you read the numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you needed to make copies of it.
Or the section, section 1, kind of, and, copy that. I'm sure it's something we can work on. Thank you, Pete. Everybody say thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Did you guys know that Pete came on board as a block captain? Give him the clap.
You don't want to do that, Larry.
Don't want to give him the clap?
Right.
Okay.
And just before you called we didn't have to go out and check. I was out walking and looking around the neighbors, and I could not see the okay sign on my neighbor's window because of the screen. And I was like, just a 2-car driveway. So I don't know if other people have that issue or not, but she had brought it to my attention. And I said, yeah, I noticed that. That I was looking around, and I don't know if her windows are tinted or what, but even still, it was difficult to see it. I don't know what you do about it, if anything.
Yeah.
Thinking about that too, but I would put mine in the garage. I have a window in my garage. I would put it in my garage because I have windows in my garage. That way, the person that's walking down the street would still be able to see it without even having to come up to the house. So
If you have a window in your garage, that's fine.
Yeah, I would say predominantly garages don't have those windows up there. Yeah, and as far as not being able to see it through the screen, I know on my windows I have screens that only goes up halfway, and so that is a good point. I don't know if the percentage, if it's high, low, that people only have the half screen. There could be a lot of people that has full screens on their windows. So.
porch is screened. You have screened in porches.
The front porch is screened in a lot of the houses.
Oh, yes, for sure. There is that too. I don't know if we're ever going to find a perfect answer.
The metal on the what'd you just say? On the door. the hang it from the metal on the screen door that goes to the front porch.
Here's the problem. It's 100-mile-an-hour winds and raining, 10 inches in 10 minutes.
Well, we got the clear to go out, so that's when I don't know.
Yeah, people aren't necessarily paying that close of attention. It's 7:30, neighbor to neighbor's going to be out. I got to go put my sign up. I don't know that people are really gonna, we have a hard enough time just getting them to do it in the first place, let alone do it on our schedule. I'm just saying, I don't know how we're gonna necessarily completely get over that hurdle. So, I think I'm winding down. Are you guys tired of me yet? Larry's jumping at the bit here. He wants me to get the hell off the stage. Any questions about what's coming up for the next 2-3 months or so? I think Roberta's going to be back on center stage for head neck injury type of thing.
Yeah, that's November 1st.
First, yep. And also we got the outside hazards, plants and insects and how to treat those. So, and Pat Summers, one of our block captains, she'll be involved with that. And then we've got the potluck coming up on December 6th. And yes, it is December 6th this year. I did receive an email from somebody that they went straight to the bottom of the list and said, it says December 5th, that's not actually a Tuesday. So just be aware. I think that's it. Okay, you take that one's off.
Okay, we'll go through this. This is one of the videos we saw last year. And it's about 7 minutes. It will demonstrate this, the Israeli bandage, which is a pressure type bandage. It's not that difficult, but if you've never done it before, it doesn't hurt to go practice. I was kidding him. I practiced on my wife's neck, and she's not here. No, I'm not kidding. Hopefully she won't listen to this. But anyway, let's go ahead and go through the video real quick, and then I will do a quick demonstration. Brian's my subject. And then on the tables, some of you people may need to move to the tables that have the either the green or the brown looking packages. We'll open that up.
Should we open those? Are those
Yeah,
sterile?
go ahead and open it up. Go ahead and take it out.
I'm jumping in on your parade for a second, Larry.
Go ahead.
Does everybody know that we have a neighbor-to-neighbor YouTube page? I'm hearing a lot of silence.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a neighbor-to-neighbor YouTube page that has medical training videos, including Bill Hilche's training videos, including the Israeli bandage training video, including the Stop the Bleed training video. In addition to that, we've been recording, I know y'all know it by now, I've been recording all these meetings. They are on there as well. So those that are not present here right now, but might want to see how the meeting went, maybe they wanted to see the training that's going to go on today, they have a chance. In about 2-3 days, it takes me a couple days to do it. It's a long process. We put those on there, so they are available. And they are at the bottom of every email I send out to you guys, whether it is the MailChimp email, which goes out to 700 people in our neighbor-to-neighbor family, or whether it's just to the block captains, radio people, and medical people. I put that link on there so that you guys can check that out. I've only seen, over the last 2 years or so, only 150 people ever hit that page. So it's there. Use it.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay.
Is this this one? Is this the right one? Is this the one we're opening, everybody?
Getting any audio. No audio? Open it up.
Now that would be a bear trying to get open.
Yeah, what you'll find when you open these things up, this is kind of, not really a tourniquet, it's a kind of a brace. And what some people look at that maybe as using a tourniquet, but you don't want to put that on top of the wound itself. The actual tourniquet goes up 3 or 4 inches above, and that's why we have that. So this is more of an option that we can turn around and reverse it, and we'll show you the demonstration. Even if you don't have the sound, I think you'll be able to see it. Again, obviously the white is the bandage that goes on top of the wound itself. Some of the 6 inches may have 2. That's in the case, hope we'll never have that problem, but in the military, a lot of cases you get shot, you have a primary entry and an exit wound. So they have designed some of those for the military that it has two paths for putting on the wound itself. But most of what you'll probably find in your kit will be something like that. That goes on top of it. And then once you put it under on the wound itself, and then around one time through the little, I don't know what you call that.
They tell you to go on the sides of it.
Yeah, if you go through and then turn it, and he'll show that here in just a second.
Coming out of your speaker, do it on one side of it,
I've got it.
and on the other side. Go down. And then take it and twist it. You have audio? It's supposed to get more pressure. I don't hear it.
Maybe just place the microphone aside.
It's not playing at all. It's not coming out of his speakers.
It's not coming through the HDMI. This is next to impossible. It is. There's one.
Okay. That's obvious. Remove it from the package. Okay, and he'll route it through this applicator. You'll see that in just a second. And then he reverses it. And then go back in the opposite direction.
Did he twist that?
Yeah, yes. He twists the bandage to go back over. So put it in the applicator.
Well, it looked like he twisted it. I'd like to see that closer up.
I'm dead right.
Would you like to just go ahead and play it and do the volume here?
No, I missed it.
You want to do that?
Do I now?
Play it and just put the microphone here.
Okay. We can sync it.
The emergency bandage, nicknamed Israeli bandage by U.S. troops, debuted in 2000. Invented by an IDF medic, the device is designed to stop the bleeding of traumatic hemorrhage wounds. It is the only device of its kind that utilizes a patented pressure applicator to exert approximately 30 pounds of pressure at the wound site. The original and patented closure bar at the end of the cloth lead secures the wrap. Various styles are available, which we will discuss in a few moments, and practically any type of wound can be wrapped with the bandage. emergency bandage is the bandage of choice for U.S. and international military units. It is also found a home in EMS, industrial, and hospital arenas. Due to its versatility, the bandage eliminates the need for 4x4 dressings, Curlex, sticks, etc. That is a savings of money and space and an increase in efficacy. All styles of the emergency bandage have the same key components. One sterile non-adherent pad, or primary dressing, one latex-free elasticized cloth leader, or secondary dressing, one high-performance pressure applicator, and one closure bar to secure the wrap. Product details are clearly marked on the front of the product, and instructions are on the back. Rip open the outer packaging at any corner notch. Remove the bandage from the clear inner wrap by ripping the center notch. Unfold the bandage and notice that your hands never need to touch the sterile non-stick pad. Place the sterile pad on the wound in such a way that the pressure applicator is offset to the side of the wound. Wrap one revolution of the cloth leader. Insert into the pressure applicator and begin wrapping in the opposite direction, tightening as you go. Once you complete the wrap, insert one side of the closure bar into 2 or more fabric folds, like a pin in a shirt pocket, to secure the wrap. Another way to begin a standard wrap and achieve even more pressure is to twist the cloth leader each time you wrap on top of the pressure applicator and close the wrap with the closure bar. To ensure that no outside debris makes contact with the wrapped wound, wrap below and above the initial revolution first. Complete the wrap and secure with the closure bar. Insert the leader into the pressure applicator to create a space for insertion. Bring the pad to the wound area. Insert the cloth leader. Wrap and secure with the closure bar. You can also use the cloth loop near the pressure applicator. Again, bring the pad to the wound area. Wrap and close.
I don't have a closure bar.
The emergency bandage also has an application that is similar to a tourniquet. While it will not completely stop blood flow, it will reduce it significantly. To use the tourniquet-like function of the bandage, wrap as normal. At the end of the wrap, lift 2 or 3 folds of fabric, insert the closure bar, and twist as you would a tourniquet. When you are unable to continue twisting, close the wrap with the closure bar. Select versions of the emergency bandage feature a second mobile pad. Styles with 2 pads facilitate coverage of entry and exit wounds. Exit wounds often bleed more profusely than entry wounds. With that in mind, place the stationary pad on the exit wound. The pressure applicator is on top of this pad and will exert additional pressure on the site. Slide the mobile pad to the entry wound. Wrap and secure as previously instructed. Wrap 1 revolution of the cloth leader. Insert into the pressure applicator and begin wrapping in the opposite direction, tightening as you go. Close the wrap with the closure bar. Place the pad on the wound. Wrap 1 revolution. Go through the pressure applicator, pull in the opposite direction and wrap again. Insert the cloth leader into the space between the pressure applicator and the patient, and now begin to wrap head to chin. Close the wrap with the closure bar. Place the pad on the abdominal wound to cover and hold the exposed contents in place. Pull the cloth leader through the pressure applicator and continue wrapping in the opposite direction. Exert only necessary pressure as you wrap, because your goal is simply to cover the wound. Close the wrap with the closure bar. about these products, contact us at www.ps-med.com.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna need it for Stop the Bleed too.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do a quick demo, if you don't mind, Brian.
Yeah, can we do it up here?
Yeah, we probably can. Okay, again, you have the pad. The one thing I found is that when, let's just wrap your arm.
All right, let's turn. Ouch!
Don't do that. Just the first wrap, you need to be sure that's tucked in, otherwise you'll have a little problem with it when you start. Go through the applicator and then reverse. And you can make this about almost 30 pounds of pressure all the way around.
Do I get a lollipop?
You might.
I saw a candy
You may
bar.
lose your arm. And like I say, there's enough wrap in this thing if you need to use it like on a thigh or something like that. And then you have the closure bar, and it just goes in one of the, like, oh, here we go. Okay, and that pretty well secure it. So let's go ahead and, feels pretty tight, right?
It is?
Yeah.
I can feel it reducing the blood flow to my hand.
That's what I was trying to do, so.
I'm starting to feel woozy.
So let's go ahead, if you can, at your table, Roberta, let's you and I and Brian just kind of walk around, and if you need somebody, move to another table if you're by yourself.
Who else is by themselves? Anybody?
Well, Robert could use a partner. Good job. Yeah.
I want to see how this twisted. Here's the wound right there. Oh, that's the wound right there. Okay. So, put that on.
You'll go through.
Now, getting it in here. This seems backwards. It seems like it ought to be this way. He did some kind of a twist.
I'll take Larry's.
Gotta go one way and then the other way.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Now,
Now,
and it goes in the opposite direction.
does it go this way?
Yeah. All around. It makes it pretty tight.
Sit down.
But I understand. And we keep
But
going.
you can tell, the tighter you go, the better off you're gonna be.
Oh, sure. So go all the way to the end. And you get to that lock bar. Piece of stuff. And that goes, what, in here?
Yeah.
Both sides?
Sometimes you'll have another.
Yeah, I was gonna say that then.
Yeah. But actually, one can hold it. One
That's
will
right,
hold it.
yeah. It could go through here. It doesn't have to go all the way under. Right, I get it. It
Yeah.
could go. It doesn't have to go all the way to the end. Unlocking is another story.
Yeah, it's designed.
Designed not to unlock, right? That's right, just cut that sucker off. Thank you. I think I got it.
Hope you never have to use it.
God, I do too.
Bob, I gotta tell you, man, if I ever get hurt, I'm coming to your place so you can put this bandage on. I give you 5 stars, man. Looks like you're down to the nitty-gritty now.
When you hook it, it's hard to get unhooked, so
Oh, and I think you just turn it,
I would recommend not hooking it.
yeah, and then clip it on,
Put it on any end.
yeah, anything you can find.
I was an EMT at one time.
Okay.
Up top. Good job. I proclaim you as proficient. You want to try? Well, no, there's no blood involved here.
I do have a pocket knife, if you need the cut, or you just, no.
Hey, on the, Brian, on the tourniquet part of it, we're not gonna buy a tourniquet. No. But on the tourniquet part of it, we would recommend.
It had to be offset from the wound.
Offset.
Are you gonna live?
Yeah, and then tourniquet.
It looks comfortable. But it wasn't that you came in, it was a hat.
Well, that's the way it
Yeah,
came.
and then come, no.
So we should have rolled it back up before we started the cramps.
And now you've got the.
He was turning his.
No, it's got a,
Of course, when it
So
comes
it's
out
right
of the
up.
package, it's gonna be in a roll.
yeah, it's got a,
Training purposes, you have to redo it.
right,
Did you do it, Rob?
yeah, I did my.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna go behind it.
The bandage now is no longer sterile.
Right,
So
That's right, that's why I don't want to open mine.
get another one.
Just get a practice, use the practice one. Mine's still in the kit.
Yeah, we'll use these as practice, because once you take it out of the package, it's not going to be a sterile bandage, right? So, those who have it at the home, again, I've got plenty more at the house. So we got plenty of the bandages when we sell the kits. They'll come totally.
Did you get a
Sterile.
chance to practice it?
Yeah.
Did you guys get a chance?
Okay, any questions? Does it make more sense now? At least you got your hands on it, besides looking at the video.
There is a question about the use as a tourniquet.
Okay.
Wrap it twice and then turn.
You can wrap it twice and put it through the applicator and then go in the opposite direction and then keep it real tight as you. Well, I mean, that's a possibility, but we're not recommending that because we do have the cat tourniquets.
That's,
The thing is, you don't want to have
Need help there?
the pressure with the applicator on top of the wound. The intent is to put the tourniquet 3 to 4 inches above the injury. So this is more for the bandage purposes, not so much trying to use it as a tourniquet.
I don't see it.
Okay?
Here it is.
Okay, get it turned over to you.
Done.
Yeah, you did it.
I'm a Houdini.
Yeah, you are. Oh, I got a question. One of the dinners you had way back, one of the first things you did, he asked people if they wanted one of these packages, they could put $20 in.
Right,
Donation.
right.
My friend put $20 in, but he never saw a package.
You need to get that information to Larry.
Larry.
Yeah, because Larry was handling
Yeah, this goes way back. It goes
Yeah.
way back.
money donated but didn't receive trauma kit.
Remember, he put his name, I'm sure he signed the list, but I'm not sure what happened.
I will get, I'm going to restock these with that.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, I do have the pins now, the marking pins, they'll be for the cat, so.
Yeah, I just, you know, never,
Yeah, don't want to let that fall through the cracks.
at least he thought he was donating for that. He wasn't just donating, he was donating, you know, buying a kit.
Yeah,
Okay.
you get it.
That sound reasonable?
When it comes to
Sure, it does.
keeps it together, and you just keep on taking down the string.
Right. Right.
Okay, this is a basic video on Stop the Bleed.
This week's video is a Stop the Bleed class from start to finish.
It's about 17 minutes.
So like I said, we are going through Stop the Bleed start to finish. And for those of you that don't know, Stop the Bleed is a campaign that's sponsored by the Department of Defense that's aimed at civilian preparedness for massive hemorrhage. We found that in shootings like Sandy Hook, there are a lot of preventable deaths, that if we had somebody on scene right away that was able to control hemorrhage, outcomes would have been much better. So this course is put on by 4 main entities, and these are the entities that kind of gathered the data and put together the recommendations. These entities are the Hartford Consensus Group, the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma, the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care, and the National Association of Emergency Medical Technology.
The time to prepare for the future is right now. Emergency Essentials sells the best emergency food products on the market at the very best prices. We guarantee it.
So I do have to warn you, some of the images in this class could be slightly disturbing to you. You know, there will be a couple images of gory injuries, but there's nothing too extreme as we move forward. It's about 15 minutes, and that's give or take a couple seconds there. I'm ballparking some of those averages. But what that means to you is that somebody bleeding from a femoral artery wound has about 3 to 4 minutes before they bleed out entirely. And chances are you do not have EMS providers on scene yet. So it's really important that we have what's called immediate responders, and those are civilians trained in CPR and bleeding control that can potentially save a life. So where can you use this training? This training is good anywhere. You know, it might be a school shooting or a workplace shooting, but more likely it's going to be a chainsaw accident or a car accident, something that is in your world normally. And most people at some point in their life are going to come across somebody that is severely injured. And if you have the training, you may be able to prevent a death. There are two main goals in this course, and they're pretty simple. Number one is to recognize life. Threatening hemorrhage. And number two is know how to act on it. There are 3 skill sets we're going to talk about in this lecture, and those are pressure, packing, and tourniquets. All 3 are interventions to control potentially life-threatening bleeding. One of the first priorities when rendering emergency medical care to somebody is your own safety. If you get hurt, you can't help anybody else, and you're a drain on medical resources as they arrive on scene, because now they have to treat you as well as the patients that were already injured. So if you feel the scene is unsafe, stop what you're doing right there, see if you can move the patient to safety, and if you can't, get yourself to a safe location. In a shooting, make sure you're not doing care under active gunfire. In a motor vehicle accident, make sure you're not going to be hit by a car, and you can basically figure out what the risks are at any scene and just make sure you do not succumb to those. Along the same lines of making sure your scene is safe, you also have to make sure you're protecting yourself from potential pathogens. The main one with hemorrhage is obviously going to be bloodborne pathogens. If you have gloves or other types of PPE, I would always recommend you wear them. However, be aware that your skin, if it's intact, is actually a pretty good barrier against bloodborne pathogens. If you get blood on your skin, notify a healthcare provider. Make sure you're washing it with soap and water as soon as possible. And you might want to follow up with either the emergency department or your primary care provider to make sure that you are not exposed to any deadly diseases. Those of you that are healthcare providers and that have learned a basic assessment, you're going to know that the ABCs are usually airway, breathing, circulation. When we're talking just about hemorrhage control, your ABCs are going to be 3 main parts. There's going to be alert 911, bleeding, compress. And we'll talk about each of those in detail as we move forward. Calling 911 is your first priority because you need to get somebody coming to help you as soon as possible. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of times people will go to help and people will believe that somebody else is calling for help. So you have to make sure you're taking responsibility for that.
Let's go back to ABCs.
Too far, Larry.
What's the time?
Right there.
4:25? Okay. Wait a second, 4:25? Right?
You're going to know that the ABCs are usually airway, breathing, circulation. When we're talking just about hemorrhage control, your ABCs are going to be 3 main parts. There's going to be alert 911, bleeding, compress. And we'll talk about each of those in detail as we move forward. Calling 911 is your first priority because you need to get somebody coming to help you as soon as possible. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of times people will go to help and people will believe that somebody else is calling for help. So you have to make sure you're taking responsibility for that. and getting an ambulance activated and getting them on the way to your scene, because it will take, like we said earlier, upwards of 8 minutes. So you need to make sure that they're on their way as soon as possible. It's really important that you know where you are, that you have an accurate location for your call. Dispatch oftentimes will have a general location, but it's sometimes hard for them to pinpoint you on a map. So make sure you have an address across street if nothing else. And then always follow the instructions 911 operators are giving you. Many 911 operators are EMD trained, which is emergency medical dispatch, and they're actually trained to walk you through steps of bleeding control, CPR, and rescue breaths, along with some basic medication administrations. So they know what they're talking about and do what they say. The second step is bleeding. We have to recognize bleeding. So we have to find where they're bleeding from, and we need to look for 3 main things that are going to cue us into this being a life-threatening hemorrhage. One is continuous bleeding. Sometimes, especially like scalp wounds, you'll get there, it'll look really dramatic, but it's not actually bleeding anymore. So with those patients, we might not necessarily need to go to some of the extreme measures that we would if somebody has a life-threatening hemorrhage. You're also looking for a large volume bleeding. So this isn't, somebody bleeding just a little bit out of a cut. This is massive hemorrhage. And along with that comes blood pooling under the patient or around them. If you see that, that is a huge indicator this is a life-threatening hemorrhage. Be aware that the patient might be bleeding in multiple locations and you might have to intervene on multiple points. And then also understand that clothing can oftentimes hide blood loss. So especially a down coat, when I did ski patrol, one of the things they told us was a down jacket could hold 1 to 2 liters of blood before you saw anything externally. So make sure you're taking them out of bulky clothes and really pinpointing exactly where the blood is coming from. So you have 3 main sites you may be bleeding from. You have your extremities, which are your arms and legs. Now these are usually going to be treated with a tourniquet application above the injury. You have your junctional sites, so that's going to be your neck, armpits, and groin. And these are going to be treated with wound packing generally. And then finally, you have the injuries to your body. So that's everything in your abdomen, in your chest. And those are going to be treated by direct pressure, essentially. But there's not a whole lot we're going to do in the field for these patients. We're going to talk about each of these techniques as we move forward. All right, so the first technique we're going to learn is direct pressure. So to perform this, you're going to take a towel, a sweatshirt, a hand, and you're going to put it over the wound, and you're going to press down forcefully. You want to focus your pressure on the location of the bleed.
In this video, I'm going to show you how I went from being a burnout doctor, overworked and underpaid, to making over $3 million of passive income.
It goes
Last
to
year alone,
commercial.
without having
Pause
to
yours,
spend money
Larry.
on things like real estate completely out of my control.
And then use just enough gauze or cloth to cover the injury. You don't want to be using...
You're 7:57. I wouldn't do anything.
7:57.
Go back and use it. Wait a second, I'll just go ahead and start it, and then you stop.
Huge amounts of clothing or a huge pressure bandage, because if you're doing that, you're not seeing if it's bleeding around that, and you can't really pinpoint where it's bleeding from. If pressure stops the bleeding, keep the pressure on the wound until help arrives. There's no need to go farther if this is actually stopping the bleeding. The next technique we're going to learn is packing. So packing is actually taking gauze or a shirt, towel, something, and it's pushing it down into the wound to the site of bleeding. This is primarily going to be used on your junctional injuries. Be aware that you can pack wounds on the arms as well, although a tourniquet is your best choice. If you don't have a tourniquet, you can move to packing for these life-threatening hemorrhages. The thought behind this is if you're just applying direct pressure over the deep wound. So with wound packing, you're going to take gauze and you're going to just start pushing it into the wound to the site of bleeding. If you have a lot of pooled blood in that wound and you don't know where it's bleeding from, you can do a quick sweep with your finger and get some of that blood out. Identify what artery is bleeding. Take your gauze, you're going to put it up against that wound, and you're going to start packing the gauze into it as much as possible. Fill it all the way up, and you're going to hold direct pressure over that until more help arrives. So what you want to use for wound packing is going to be hemostatic gauze if you have it. This is not powder that you dump into the wound. These are not recommended. Stick with the Committee for Tactical Combat Casualty Care's recommendations. So mainly that's going to be your combat gauze, by QuickClot, or it's going to be your Celox gauze. So this is gauze that has a mineral on it. They have a couple different mechanisms of action, but it's generally a mineral that will help promote the clotting process along with that direct pressure. If you don't have that, just packing gauze will work okay. And then as a worst case scenario, you can always use a t-shirt, a towel, or some kind of fabric you have on you. Be aware that I have videos that go much more in-depth in wound packing and tourniquet application, so I'll leave those links down below in the description if you want to check those out and get a little bit more instruction on the skill itself. So like I said, generally wound packing is going to be used for your junctional sites where a tourniquet can't be applied. Although if you do not have a tourniquet, you can do wound packing on an extremity. The only thing to avoid is you don't want to be doing wound packing on the body itself, so in the chest or the abdomen. In the abdomen, there are some techniques for wound packing. However, you do not carry enough gauze to do that, and you're just opening it up for a lot of infection and potential internal injuries. So we want to avoid doing that. And then in the lungs, you're going to start packing down, and you're going to be packing gauze into the thoracic cavity, which is going to do damage to the lungs and cause more problems than it's going to solve. Plus, you're not going to be putting pressure directly on the artery because it's probably deeper in the body. So avoid packing the body if at all possible. The last technique we're going to talk about is tourniquet application.
Probably a little less than that.
Constricting band that's placed above an injury that's
Yeah, that was good, but just
farther down that extremity. Tourniquets are a great tool, and there's a lot of misconceptions about them. You will not lose your limb just because a tourniquet's applied. This is old science. And they've really found that you can have a tourniquet applied for hours and hours before you have any neurologic damage to that extremity. So if you have life-threatening bleeding to one of your extremities, apply a tourniquet first line. You don't have to try pressure first. You can jump straight to that tourniquet to cut off blood flow. Generally speaking, a tourniquet's going to be placed 2 to 3 inches above the serious bleeding. Don't want to place it over the elbow or knee, and then you tighten the tourniquet until bleeding stops. Do not, under any circumstances, remove the tourniquet. That's something that a physician is going to have to do at the hospital once it's applied. Now, I will say that there are a lot of different brands out there. I will leave the link to the Committee for Tactical Combat Casualty Care's recommendations for tourniquets down below. I'd recommend picking up one of those. Don't go off some of these other commercial tourniquets that really haven't been studied. Once again, I've got a video that talks a lot more in-depth about the recommended tourniquets, and you can kind of use that video to inform your purchasing choices for those.
Have you heard of Executive Order 14067? Most people probably haven't, but it could completely...
A couple things to remember with tourniquets. You can do self-application with them. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you're the one that's hurt, throw on a tourniquet, tighten that down, and get that bleeding stopped. Second, tourniquets are going to hurt. Explain that to the patient as you're doing it. It is not a comfortable experience because you're literally cutting off all blood flow to that extremity. And then understand that if the first tourniquet does not stop bleeding, you may have to apply a second one. If you don't have a second one, you can try tightening the one that's already on them. But once again, under no circumstances should you take the tourniquet off the patient. One concern that's brought up with a lot of people, and rightfully so, is small children. The cat tourniquet will only fit down to a certain size. Most commercial tourniquets are the same, where they're not going to fit very, very small kids. There are a couple out there, but most are not approved by the Committee for Tactical Combat Casualty Care. Generally speaking, if they don't fit one of these commercial tourniquets, direct pressure is going to control the bleeding very well. And that's because kids have a much lower systolic blood pressure than adults, so it takes a lot less pressure to stop the bleeding. So a tight pressure bandage around their arm or just held direct pressure is going to be very effective for children, and they don't always need a tourniquet when adults do. Now, that being said, wound packing is going to work the same on children for your deep wounds as it will for adults, so don't be afraid to do that. Alright guys, a couple quick things to talk about. Number one, impaled objects. We want to keep those in place if at all possible. If we remove it, that object may have been up against an artery and now you're actually causing more bleeding by taking it out. So keep it in and have a trauma surgeon remove that in the hospital. That being said, if that object's in the airway or interfering with compressions, you can remove it. Just be prepared to control massive hemorrhage from that wound. The next thing to talk about is improvised tourniquets. Generally speaking, they're very ineffective and probably should not be done if you have other means of bleeding control at your disposal. That means that we want to be packing these wounds before we're going to try to do an improvised tourniquet on an arm or a leg. They found in the Boston bombing, all the improvised tourniquets applied were ineffective when they got to the ER. That's not to say that this isn't something you can learn and practice and be effective with, but generally speaking, we want to avoid them. This might seem self-explanatory, but if the patient has lost an arm or a leg, you want to apply a tourniquet to that extremity regardless of the amount of blood that they've lost or if they're still bleeding. That's because they might be hypovolemic, so they have lower blood volume, and they might be in a severe state of shock that's causing vasoconstriction that causes that extremity not to bleed. Now, as they progress down shock, that vasoconstriction will start to dilate and they'll start bleeding again. Also, once they're resuscitated in the ER with blood, then they're going to start bleeding as well. So we want to preemptively put a tourniquet on. There are also not too many downsides to doing this because you don't have to worry about neurologic injury considering they've already lost that extremity. Pain is obviously going to be a very real thing in these situations. One, their injury hurts. Two, you're either putting a tourniquet on them or you're packing a wound or you're holding extreme pressure on where they just got injured. Make sure you're communicating to your patient and doing your best to calm them down. If you're calm, they're going to be calm. All right, a quick summary of everything we talked about. So, number one, your personal safety is of the utmost importance. Two, make sure you got an ambulance coming to your location to get the patient to definitive care and take care over for you. You have to be able to find and identify life-threatening bleeding, and then you have to be able to intervene appropriately. So if the patient is bleeding on their extremities, generally speaking, that's going to be treated with a tourniquet. In the absence of a tourniquet, you can use wound packing and direct pressure to stop that bleeding. On a superficial wound, sometimes direct pressure is all you need. If they're bleeding from their core, so their chest or their abdomen, generally speaking, we're not going to be doing any intervention beyond some superficial pressure and getting them to a trauma center as fast as possible. The last step is just waiting for help to arrive. Don't get bored and let go of that pressure because they're going to start bleeding. It is your responsibility to keep the pressure on the wound for as long as you can until help arrives. All of this can be found on bleedingcontrol.org. I highly recommend you find a class that you can take in person and actually practice the tourniquet application. Whatever kind of commercial tourniquet you buy, you have to make sure that you are proficient in it. Like I said before, I would recommend going with a Committee for Tactical Combat Casualty Care recommended tourniquet. However, there are a ton of devices on the market, and make sure you're doing your research before you're buying one. Guys, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and
Okay.
Very well done.
I handed out a sheet of paper. It's on the tables. Basically, what I did last night was I just kind of I've gone through several runs of this video, and so I jotted down notes that I kind of thought was important and something to remember. But the first thing I want to say is that you do have a page 4 in your manual. I assume you all have the manual? Not with you, but, right, and it's more or less, this is the page for bleeding. It doesn't say a whole lot.
In the Good Samaritan section, everybody.
On page 4. It really doesn't say an awful lot. It's telling you to call 911. It's telling you to put direct pressure on the wound. And if it's uncontrolled, applying a tourniquet. Can you all hear me? And that's all good, but it doesn't tell you how. It's just telling you that that's what you should do, which is good. But on the sheet of paper that I sent out, it's more or less gives you, it's a synopsis of what this movie was about, what the video covered. So you can take that home with you and you can look at it. You can also find the video itself on YouTube.
Which is on our playlist.
And so you can watch it over again if it makes you feel comfortable. I watched it 3 or 4 times, and I think I learned something every time. So anyway, if you read this or you want to look at it, you have any questions, just keep in mind, I thought was very important that wasn't mentioned in the video, was the fact is, especially folks our age, ask the patient if they're alert, if they're on any kind of blood thinners. Because it takes normally 70 to 120 seconds for blood to start clotting. But when you're taking blood thinners, it takes 180 to 240 seconds. So you're going to have to work a lot quicker if this person says they're on. You have to take that into consideration. The rest of it, basically, the body holds, the adult body holds 1 to 2 to 1.5, 1.2 to 1.5 gallons of blood. That's not an awful lot. So I don't know how many liters you can lose. I had that information, I don't have it with me.
20% blood loss is death.
20%, okay, so 20%.
You don't recover from it.
You don't, okay, you don't recover from if you've lost 20% of your blood volume. If the bleeding is close to the bone and it's an artery, you can always apply pressure, even with your finger, and try to squeeze that artery against the bone. Now, I think you all know the difference between arteries and veins. Yep, no question there, right? Vein, of course, is a lot slower, and artery is coming from the heart. The part is pumping the blood through the arteries, which gives it a pulsing sensation. Where the vein is the return of the blood to the lungs, where they get re-oxygenated and all that stuff. Now, applying a tourniquet. He told you about applying the tourniquet. We'll show you how to do it. The tourniquet never, once you apply that tourniquet, you never ever take it off. You never ever loosen it. Okay, that will be done at the hospital under controlled situation. You can try packing a wound if you've applied the tourniquet. You can also try packing the wound if it's still bleeding somewhat, oozing or bleeding. The bleeding will slow down, but if it doesn't stop, you can try packing the wound. On the thingy here, on the tourniquet, it has a time. You write on there, make sure you go with a pen, a Sharpie, and record the time that you put that tourniquet on. So when EMS takes that patient to the hospital, the people in the hospital will know how long that tourniquet's been on. And tourniquets now are, you can go 8 hours with a tourniquet on, and it's not going to do any neurological damage to the limb.
Okay, one thing your kit does not have is the marker. I've got the markers at the house now. So at that point, in the future, I would say if you have a kit, text me or let me know if you have it.
Email.
I'll email it either way. If you let me know, give me your address. It's not hard. I have a golf cart. Be glad to get out and deliver that marker to you, because it's again, and if you have trouble even marking that, you can always mark the forehead.
On the forehead, yes.
All right, that permanent marker's not that permanent. Okay, so that's another option if you can't do it on the label.
If you have a pocketbook, you can do it with lipstick. I mean, you can use anything, but get that time down. Do not place the tourniquet over a joint. Don't place it on an elbow or a knee, because you can create more damage and it's not going to stop the bleeding. You have to do it above the joint. He talked about the neck and the armpits, and the most you can do for that is external pressure. Of course, you can't put a tourniquet on it. So
you could
direct pressure and or packing. And they showed you how to pack in the movie. You just take the gauze, put it next to the limb, or wherever it is, or the groin, and start pushing that gauze into the wound. Now, if you're not too squeamish, of course you got gloves on, I hope, you can actually put your finger in the wound and you will feel a pulsing. So you can actually, in worst case scenario, you can actually take your finger and push that artery against a bone, if it's near a bone, and that you're pressing it against something hard, and it will stop the bleeding or slow it down, if you don't have anything else. But then packing. Pack as much gauze as you can to exert pressure on that artery. And you can use it for veins too. I guess the trunk area, the only thing you can do is cover it. Don't mess with the chest because you're dealing with the lungs. If somebody's guts are hanging out, you don't try to push them back in, but you can put sterile gauze, a sterile pad or something on top of it, and you can put a wet towel over it. And then another piece of gauze, because the wet towel will put moisture on the organs so that they won't dry out. The hospital personnel will be able, the surgeons will be able to shove it back in where it belongs. You don't do that.
Also, the medical personnel will have those abdominal bandages, okay? And they also have the Surlox gauze that helps aid the...
Oh, that's probably me. I thought I shut it off. I'm sorry. They'll go away.
Anyway, what they'll have in their kit is one of the abdominal bandages. So all our medical personnel will have that. Now, if you want to, these really aren't that expensive. They're like 10 or 12 bucks a piece. But you know, again, I would say right now, the main thing is the ABCs, the call 911, stop the bleed, and control it. Okay.
Right, and you can use a towel if you don't have the abdominal bandage, or something to lay on and put some weight, but not pressure. Don't pressure. Okay, if you have an impaled object, somebody's got a piece of wood or something in their arm or leg or whatever, do not remove it. The reason behind that is because it could be cutting off an artery. If you take that object out, that artery is going to have fun and it's going to go all over the place. It's going to spurt blood. So it could be stopping the blood flow. Let the hospital do it. You can pack around it if you want to. You can take your gauze and you can wrap it. I can show you, but you can wrap it around, not on the object, but around the object to protect it from moving. Okay? Wrap around it. Top, bottom, whatever. Just to keep it stable. And the same thing with the eye. If there's eye damage and you have and something impaled in the eye, you don't remove it, you wrap it. And the thing of it is this, is with an eye, they say to wrap both eyes. Because what happens is if a person has the damage in one eye and you wrap that, they're still looking around on the other eye, with the other eye, and it's going to cause the eye that's damaged to move. So just tell them that's what you're doing. Okay, any questions on that? Take the sheet home with you and it gives you an idea of what the movie was about and gives you little pointers. Larry thought it was pretty good, so we passed it out. Okay, now we're going to go to the tourniquet.
Okay, if you got the tourniquet at your table.
First,
Oh, I want to tell you one thing about the tourniquet before you start. You can wrap this tourniquet back up
it tore right open.
and put it in a baggie because it can be reused because, from what we're doing with it, because it's not sterile anyway. So just wrap it up and put it in a baggie for your kit.
Okay, so how do you put this together, Larry? Show us how you put it together, just like
Okay.
that.
When it comes out, you'll have through the loop. And let me just use you real quick.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and put it through the loop.
I'm going to stand up so people can see.
I think I'll hold on. Here. The Velcro portion is to the outside. Okay. You are taking it difficult for me. No, it's not either.
Okay, I'm about dead at this point, Larry. My life's in your hands, buddy. Not on the joint.
Not on the elbow.
Not on the elbow.
Right.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Once you get the portion of it, I won't do really a couple of turns. It goes into the loop, and then it'll go back around once, and then the time portion goes on the top.
We don't have that tourniquet.
Yeah, this is the tourniquets he just passed out.
Oh, I didn't get one.
Well, anyway, I'll probably just give you this one. Not a problem. We'll make sure you have it.
It's not in my kit, that's the one thing.
Okay, so,
What's your name?
so you should tighten that up, I would assume, as tight as you can.
Oh, I got a warm.
And then what do I do?
Tighten it all the way as far as you can.
Is that all you do with that strap? And then you take it
Right there, up to the edge.
and you start turning the windlass. Oh yeah, that's getting tight. That gets tight real quick.
Oh, I see, I see.
You only wrap it once, is that correct?
I think so.
Stop the bleed, you see the bleed stuff, I don't wanna do that. I'll keep it.
Just go ahead and put it under. All right.
I'm bleeding out.
And then, I see.
I got no one to blame but myself.
So,
Damn it.
you're giving everybody one of these?
Help.
I took them out of the kit.
Goodbye, cruel world.
I would say,
Damn, I can't get it to latch. So how do you latch it?
I think you have to, wrap your, rest of
you may
it.
want to have a rubber band to hold it in.
Well, I think it snapped around. Yeah, can you see what I'm not doing right here? Yeah, but you gotta put that in the little holder here to keep the windlass. And it won't go in there.
Very good, thank you.
Take the little white thing off.
And this guy here.
Down right away.
Okay.
Already have a loop.
It would be on the floor. It would really, well, cutting off circulation is really.
Maybe it's because it's, yeah, it's on an awkward spot, I don't know.
That goes in.
Yeah, but you need it super tight for it to actually cut out the blood. I haven't lost blood flow yet. I'm still spurting.
Very good.
It will not get as tight as the other is.
Interesting.
But that's, you know,
That's got a much,
more.
yeah, yeah.
You wanna try it on me? Yes, sir.
My goodness, this is getting.
Okay, so here you go.
Tell your boss what you need to use it, so it has to be.
I'll get
The
it.
bottom part of my arm,
Hi.
where I'm bleeding heavily, right about here.
How do you get this thing down? Does this Velcro come off?
And I understand it can go over close.
Yeah.
Once you crank it,
I think you should initially tighten it. Should have been on that. That's when you tight.
Oh, it doesn't? I thought it was technically.
Right, that's the final start.
Stop it right.
Ah, ow.
Ow, ow.
Just peel it back over here.
Maybe, I don't know. Because once you've got that, I mean, you can
stop my blood flow. Well, no, I went, ow. Don't listen to my ow, save my freaking life.
You're supposed to tell them it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, really.
Shut up, it's pain.
Tell me how was.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt.
It hurts, it means you're still alive.
It's true.
I don't.
This, yeah. Tight.
I don't think I'm getting, where's our medical lady?
That's it.
She's over there, okay, well, I'm taking it down.
Time on it.
You wanna give it a shot?
Okay, but it's not certain.
So it's gotta go through first. And then once you got it in there, give this a couple of turns.
You got that? You wanna try it?
Order in the windlass.
Try it on me?
Y'all give it a try over there?
Sure, why not?
It really is.
Well, that's good,
very good.
I was just warming up. Sweet.
All right, thank you for coming out. I hope some of the demos are helpful. Again, you've got, as Brian said on our link, in terms of the training videos, they're still there if you want to refresh
I don't
yourself.
think this part's all that.
Again, next month, we'll be dealing with the plant and insect and treatments of that. And then hopefully we'll have some fun in December. We'll have our potluck. So, other than that, you're more than welcome to go home and enjoy your evening, what's left of it.
Yeah. Thank you, that was very good.
Hey, Larry?
Yeah.
Oh, no, don't be afraid to call me. No, I'm coming around. This really took me started. Oh, yeah, it really did. I was shocked. I mean, sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm beginning to wonder what I really do.
Okay, we'll call it. Thank you very much.